May 1994 and June 1994 because I only read two books in June. So I'm going to put these two together. I had five books in May, but only two in June. So let's start with May 1994. Still a telemarketer, still seeing an older woman, which leads us to book number one in May of 1994, which is The Bridges of Madison County by Robert James Waller. This book was huge. The woman I was seeing thought it was so incredibly romantic and said I should read it, so I did. I'm not a fan. I am not a fan of infidelity and just the whole idea that this is some great love story about a bored housewife who meets a wandering photographer and they have 4 days of passion and it was the greatest love of their life. I don't know, just bugs me. And if I'm not mistaken, her husband wasn't abusive or anything. She was just bored. Not a fan. Never seen the movie. Book number two. What a way to start. Book number two, Mercycle by Piers Anthony. This is one of his standalone books, and these aliens from a alternate dimension, an out of phase dimension. I don't know. These aliens are trying to save the Earth and parallel Earths from a meteor strike or something. So they give, I think, 5 people the ability to breathe underwater so they can go on this adventure that's somehow going to save the Earth. It's Piers Anthony. Not a fan of his anymore, so take it for what you will. Then we have another person I'm not a fan of anymore, Mr. Murder by Dean Koontz. This is about a family man. He's got his wife, his kids, his nice little life. And then someone shows up and claims that they're the real Mr. Whoever. I don't even care what his name is. But they say, you stole my life, you stole my family. And they claim that they're the real person and they will do whatever it takes to get their life back. But are they the real Mr. Whomever? Or is it the first guy we met? Who knows? I don't care. Dean Koontz just started boring me. This video seems kind of negative. How about, it's not going to get any better, it seems, till the end. How about The Burglar Who Traded Ted Williams by Lawrence Block? This is a Bernie Rodenbar book. He was a burglar who opened a bookstore. Hasn't been burgling for a while, but his landlord threatens to raise his rent 1,000%. So Bernie decides he needs to get back into the crime game, but someone steals a bunch of baseball cards. The cops think Bernie did it, but his alibi is he was robbing someplace else, and there was a dead body in the place that he was robbing. So as usual, Bernie's going to have to use all his skills to prove himself innocent of the things he didn't do. Fun books. They're not bad. Then, the last book in May of 1994 is The Firm by John Grisham. The first John Grisham book I read, and for the most part, very good legal thriller. It's about a young lawyer who gets a job at this huge law firm. I feel like it's in New York, but doesn't really matter. Huge law firm, but things aren't what they seem. For the most part, I think this is a really good book. My only problem with it is that the main character does something that I completely disagree with, and from that point on, I had no sympathy for him. I'm just like, I don't care what happens to you. You screwed up. You get what's coming to you, pal. But it's still well written, tense. That's just my own personal thing. But yeah, I mean, it's a good book. Just, I didn't cotton to his behavior, as the kids would say nowadays. So that's the last book I read in May. And then in June, of the two books, the first was A Time to Kill by John Grisham. I believe this is his first novel. A 10-year-old black girl is raped and beaten and left for dead by these two good old white boys. Her father, I believe, kills them both, and then he's put on trial. And he's being defended by this lawyer who apparently stars in 4 books by John Grisham. I did not know that this character came back. I have not read the other 3 books that he's in. I don't know why my light keeps changing. I think I made a mistake by reading 2 John Grishams in a row because I couldn't get into this book. There were bits and pieces that I enjoyed, but overall I thought it was kind of boring. Maybe it's because it was his first book and he hadn't honed those writing skills yet, and I don't care enough to go back and reread it. See, now the lighting has changed again. I don't care enough to go back and reread it. It was fine, but it didn't. I thought The Firm was better. I do like the movie. I think it's a very good movie. And then finally, a book that I actually own, but it's over there, and it is under like 50 other books, and I didn't feel like digging it out. But it is The Return of Tarzan by Edgar Rice Burroughs. This is Tarzan Book 2, which to me has always felt like it's simply Tarzan of the Apes Part 2. You could put the first 2 books together and it tells one complete story. In my opinion, it starts pretty much where the first one left off. There might be a tiny time jump, but Tarzan has basically, if I remember correctly, he's given up the whole Greystoke thing because Jane, of course, he's in love with Jane, but Jane is supposed to marry the person they think is Lord Greystoke. Something. And so Tarzan steps aside because he thinks that's going to be what's best for Jane. So he goes off and has his own adventures, goes back to, he's in the USA for a while at the beginning, then he goes back to Europe to visit his buddy who taught him French when he was in the jungle. And they get into some shenanigans, and I think he winds up back in the jungle being Tarzan. But I think by the end of this one, he claims the Greystoke title. I believe that's the case, because he is Lord Greystoke. John Clayton, I believe is his name. Good stuff, if you like this kind of thing. And I do. I love it. I love the Tarzan stuff. And this is a really good book. And, great pulp. I mean, it's a classic. It's classic for a reason. And as I said, I think you could read the first 2 just straight through and get one big cohesive story. But that's it. 2 books in June. 5 books in May. That's all I've got. So, question. Do I have a question for this video? I think I do. For those who have watched these videos, you've seen there are times when I'll read a bunch of stuff in a row by the same author. Sometimes it's stuff I'm rereading because it's a series I love, like the Spencer books by Robert B. Parker. I can just reread those. I can read a bunch in a row. I love them. Plus, they're fast. When I discovered Andrew Vax, I read a bunch of his in a row. But then I simply read 2 John Grishams in a row and bottomed out on the second one. Now, I have read more since then. Not a lot. Not a huge John Grisham fan. But you know what? I said The Firm. Didn't I just say The Firm was the first John Grisham I read? And yet I feel that I've already talked about The Pelican Brief. This is live video recording, folks. Just stopping in the middle of whatever the hell I'm talking about to go back and check. I'm just doing a quick check. Yeah, Pelican Brief. Read it in January. So I'm a big fat liar. So I guess The Firm was the second John Grisham I read. That's neither here nor there. It just popped into my head. But anyway, so I read The Firm and then immediately went into A Time to Kill. And I did not enjoy A Time to Kill for the most part. So do you find if you're reading a bunch of things... Well, first of all, okay. Part one. Do you read a bunch of things in a row by the same author? Whether or not it's a series, say a trilogy, do you read all 3 books? If it's a series, do you just read a bunch of them? If they're standalone, but you've found this author, or it's a favorite, do you read, I'm going to grab these 5 books by this same author, read them all in a row? Do you do that? If you do you find you get diminishing returns? You know what I'm saying? You're just like, man, this first book is great. This second book's really good. Okay, this third book's okay. Which to me isn't necessarily the books themselves, but burnout. Like I said, Time to Kill could be fantastic. It was just too much John Grisham in a row. I don't know. Do you do that? Have you ever felt that? Let me know in the comments below. Does any of that make sense? But there you go. There's your question or questions for this video. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put them in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post a spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe. All that YouTube stuff. And if you'd care to follow me on other social media, my Twitter is @Ronin5757. My Instagram, where I post pictures of books, comic books, board games, and fuzzy animals, is ErikSmith5757. That's Eric with a K, ERIKSMITH 5757. That is all I have for you this week. So until next week, read more books.